Good Sunday evening. I'm KHOU meteorologist Kim Castro. It's a quiet night for us. Temperatures still staying nice and warm. Humidity is in the air, but right now it's the waiting game. We are awaiting a front that's looking to bring us some unsettled weather. So the jet stream has kept the separation between the cold air to the north, warm air to the deep south, and that's what's been fueling those back-to-back days with above normal conditions, unseasonably warm for the start of December. We even broke some records yesterday. Now that's all about to change as we welcome that next front that's looking to push through early tomorrow. That's not only going to drop our temperatures, but also bring us a chance for some strong storms. And there is the potential for some of those storms to become severe. So there's the front that's going to arrive right around the noon hour for the Houston metro area. Northern portions of the viewing area looking to get that wet weather earlier on in the day. And it's the line of storms that brings us some concern because we have all of the ingredients for what could be a potentially severe, or at least strong scenario. So once we see that front pass through tomorrow, everything is going to change. So temperatures are going to drop. We're going to squeeze out all the moisture we've been experiencing the last couple of days. We've had 7 days with dense fog advisories. The reason for that, the warm temperatures, the moisture, all of that condensing. Now for tonight, we still have the potential for some of that condensation, some of that fog to form, but it's certainly going to be less widespread and less dense than it has been the last couple of days. So we'll see the potential for some fog overnight. By tomorrow morning, we start to see that wet weather roll in. So this is overnight at 3:30 on Monday. We see some scattered showers popping up on future track. As we push towards the 7 o'clock hour, scattered showers become more widespread at the coast. Now that is the push of wet weather ahead of the main front. There's the line of storms that's pushing through the northern portion of our viewing area at 9:30, and you'll notice some isolated cells there showing some heavy downpour potential, and that magenta you see there could even indicate some strong storms that could produce some small hail. There's the front passing through the Houston metro area right around the lunch hour. Again, we're seeing that potential for some strong storms. These could bring some strong wind. They could bring some small hail, not ruling out that possibility, and we could even see the off chance of some tornadic activity. The main threat, however, from this front is going to be to the north and to the east, and I'll talk about that in a moment. 3 o'clock, those showers now staying to the coast, becoming offshore right around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So the Storm Prediction Center has at least the eastern portion of our counties under a marginal risk to see some severe weather come to fruition. So we're talking about Chambers, Galveston, we're talking about San Jacinto, Polk, Liberty, and eastern portions of Harris and Montgomery counties. You are at risk to see some of those storms fire up enough strength to become severe. And what we mean by that is, like we talked about, periods of gusty wind, potential for small hail, even some rotation. Now the good news here is there's not a whole lot of shear that we're seeing in the models, so the chance for those thunderstorms to become vertical is looking to be a little bit lessened. So the biggest threat for now is in the areas known as Dixie Alley. You probably have heard the term Tornado Alley, which encompasses Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, and portion of South Dakota. Dixie Alley isn't quite as famous as Tornado Alley, but it still has all of the potential to see those severe storms, tornadic storms, because they have all of the ingredients for severe weather. The moisture, we've got the Gulf moisture, they've got some fronts, they get better access to the fronts than we do, and they also have plenty of instability. So these are the areas that will see the biggest threat for the wet weather tomorrow. However, that doesn't rule us out of the possibility to see some of that severe weather, which is why we are in that green, which is marginal risk. The yellow is a bit more heightened risk, and those areas will be to the north and to the east. Now, how the Storm Prediction Center determines who is at risk for severe weather, the big thing that they look at is what's known as CAPE, Convective Available Potential Energy. That's just a fancy term for how much fuel is in the atmosphere that could sustain and uplift a thunderstorm to become stronger. So what we look for when we talk about instability is a big discrepancy between the temperature aloft and the temperature at the surface. So severe thunderstorm ingredients. Let's backtrack a little bit. Moisture. We've been seeing that throughout the last week, pumping in a lot of moisture that's kept the humidity up. It's felt really sticky, more like a spring day rather than approaching winter. It's the start of December after all. It hasn't felt like that at all. We've been seeing a lot of moisture pumping in from the Gulf. That's ingredient number one for thunderstorm activity. Ingredient number two is a lifting mechanism. What I mean by that is something to be able to push up the moisture, to push it up into the thunderstorm cell to fuel it. And the lifting mechanism for tomorrow is going to be that front. That dip in the jet stream is going to provide the push to lift that moisture up. The third ingredient is instability. Now we're going back to CAPE, the convective available potential energy. So because we have seen such warm days, our surface is incredibly warm. The front, it's a cold front, so it's dragging in cold air. There's going to be a big difference between the temperatures at the surface and the temperatures aloft, and warm air rises, and that creates instability. So CAPE measures how much of it is there. How much instability do we actually have? How high will that air parcel lift? How much of the air parcel will lift? The bad news for us is that we've got the warmth and we've also got the moisture. So warm, moist air is a bad combination. And the reason for that is when warm air rises, it cools. The atmosphere naturally cools as we lift it. However, air with moisture cools at a lesser rate, and so it's more buoyant. It's able to rise further and further up. The taller and taller a thunderstorm grows, the stronger and stronger the pull of air up aloft is the biggest threat that we have. So that's when we can see the small hail. That's when we can see very strong wind, because it just has all of this force, all of this energy, all of the fuel, the warm temperatures, the moisture, everything it needs to really take flight and have a mind of its own. So CAPE is measured in joules per kilogram. And typically we see CAPE between 1,000 to 4,000. A CAPE value of 1,000 would bring a low risk for severe weather. A CAPE value of 4,000 is what Tornado Alley typically gets. It's extreme weather. So they're the ones that typically see values that push all the way up to 4,000. It's rare. It's not something that happens with every thunderstorm. Not at all. But I'm mentioning all of this to you because we've been looking at the models to see how much CAPE we have, how much instability is in our atmosphere by the time the front gets here. And so what is our chance to see those storms get a lot of strength and really take off? A lot of the models are showing between 1,500 joules per kilogram, a measure of CAPE of 1,500 to 2,000. So that puts us under a moderate risk. That means we're not out of the woods to not see that potential for some severe storms. The biggest threat for us is going to be some damaging wind. Now EF0 tornadoes, their winds start at 65 and go up to 85 miles an hour. And we're not ruling out the possibility for some isolated tornadoes, which is why we have the threat for some strong wind. We could also see periods of heavy downpours, and some of these cells, if they stall out, and especially if they push a little bit further west, we could see some significant rainfall totals. I'm saying could see because as of right now, the track of the storm is to the east, which is why the areas I showed you, Arkansas, northwestern Mississippi, Tennessee, have the biggest threat for some severe storms to develop. For us, we're looking at some wind. Right now, not pushing, those wind gusts aren't forecasted to push into that dangerous category, damaging wind category, which is 60 miles an hour. But it is going to be breezy nonetheless. Even if we don't see this severe weather, some of these storms are going to be strong, and we'll certainly feel their push throughout the day tomorrow. So we're starting off the day, 8 a.m., with relatively calm wind. Well, calm, relatively speaking. The last couple of days, wind has been very light, 5 miles an hour, which is why that fog has stalled out for so long. There hasn't been enough mixing in the atmosphere. Now, wind is going to pick up a little bit. So we're starting off the morning at around 10 to 15 miles an hour. Now, look as we progress through time. you'll notice there's the divide between the front. That's 11 o'clock in the morning. So now we're starting to see wind speeds pick up quite a bit. 25-mile-an-hour wind in Tomball, in Conroy, Brenham, almost pushing up to 30. Livingston is at 30. Let's keep going. Then we see this is behind the front for most spots. Right now the front is stalling off to the coast. And we see that wind pick up behind the front too. 25-mile-an-hour wind for Bush, 29 for Columbus. A couple of 30s probably in the mix for there. So tomorrow is going to be breezy and it's going to be cooler behind the front. We'll talk about the temperatures there in a minute. But 5:30, winds start to slowly taper. Now we're seeing a couple of teens instead of the 20s. 18-mile-an-hour wind in Conroe. Still in the 20s in Pearland, 22, Sugarland, 19. And we're looking to stay breezy really through the evening. Now, rainfall forecast. I don't want you to look at this and think there's really no risk. 1/10 of an inch of rain at Hobby, 2/10 at Sugarland, that doesn't seem like a whole lot. That's what's on track for right now because the storms are forecasted to push to the east. Just takes a little shift for this to turn into this, which then means the potential for 2 inches of rain, maybe even 3 inches of rain. But as of now, yes, that is looking to stay to the east. So most spots are looking to see about 1/2 an inch of rain. Some spots pushing up to 3/4, maybe an inch. For the most part, especially western counties, looking to see a few 1/10 of an inch of rain, potentially 1/2 an inch to an inch. But the stronger, more severe, more elevated rainfall totals for now staying to the east. But this is why it's important to keep up with the forecast because this can shift very quickly. And that's when you have the difference between your run-of-the-mill thunderstorm to then your strong thunderstorm to then your severe thunderstorm. So it's important to make sure we keep track of where that front is pushing and where we're going to see the biggest lift, where we're going to see the biggest threat for some active weather. So the weather story for tonight, patchy fog overnight. I'm saying patchy because it's going to be less widespread. There's still the potential for some areas to see dense fog, but it's going to be far less widespread than it was overnight yesterday. We've got the threat for some severe storms. We'll have to watch that very closely. We'll be here tomorrow morning for you, tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow, all day to make sure we are keeping a close eye on this and making sure we're on top of where the severe threat potential is. Behind the front, we're going to be breezy, like I showed you, and we're going to be cooler by the afternoon. So the high temperature for tomorrow, 74 degrees. That's going to be early on in the day before the front gets here. That's why I have the arrow there. It means we're going to hit that high early on in the day and then temperatures are going to drop. They're going to drop into the mid 60s and that's where we're going to stay. So not cold, but cooler. Certainly cooler than what we have in the last couple of days. We made it up to 80 degrees today. We made it up to 82 yesterday. It's been unseasonably warm. We've been about 15 degrees above where we should be for this time of year. 67 is the average. So we'll be right in line with the average temperature for tomorrow. Although it's not cold, we'll feel the shift in the weather pattern. For the next 7 days, again, we'll have to keep a close eye on the forecast because behind this front, we're going to stay in the upper 60s. That's for Tuesday. There's still a chance for some scattered showers, plenty of moisture left over behind the front. And we're going to see a warm front push through too. That's going to continue those rain chances into Wednesday, although they're diminished, a 20% chance to see some wet weather there. Temperatures now in the low 70s, so back up to unseasonable values. And look at how those temperatures climb. So we're dry for Thursday, we're dry for Friday. We are scheduling our next front for Saturday. And behind this front, long-range models showing us an actual substantial drop in temperatures, potentially into the 50s by the time the weekend wraps up. So there's a lot to keep track of. You don't want to be caught off guard. You don't want to be walking around one day it's 80 degrees, the next day it's 50 degrees, or one day it's dry, and the next day, you know, wind is blowing everywhere. You have small hail coming down, or whatever the threat is. Make sure you stay with us here at KHOU.com and on social media and on TV. We'll be on tonight at 10 o'clock. We'll be on tomorrow for H-Town Rush. We'll be tracking these systems for you very closely. But the bottom line is there is the threat for some severe weather tomorrow. It's not a huge potential, but it just takes a little potential to turn our day upside down. So make sure you stay with us, and I will see you tonight at 10.